Hi, everyone. I think we'll get started. Nice to see you all. My name is Adrienne Nussbaum. I'm the director of the OISS. I think some of you might have been on a webinar with me with the admissions office a couple of months ago, but I actually didn't get to see any of your faces in that program. So happy to see you. I want to tell you what we'll be doing today. We're going to be telling you a little bit about our office and what we do. And then we are going to be answering a lot of the questions that you submitted in advance. Thank you for doing that. And then if you have any other questions, you can also submit them in the chat. I'd also like to encourage you, because we're not going to have time for every student to introduce themselves. If you want to go into the chat and introduce yourself, you can just say, hey, I'm Holly and I'm in the UK. I know Holly, so feel free to do that so we know who's online with us. So far, we have about 46 participants. So before we start, I just want the rest of the OIS staff to introduce themselves so you know who we all are. We're all online with you today. There's 5 of us. So Sue, do you want to start? You're on mute. Welcome, Sue.
By now. Hi again. Welcome. My name is Susan Shea. I'm the Associate Director, and I'm happy to see you all. We miss seeing students, so good to see you.
And we love Sue's background of gas in there. It's a beautiful picture. Great. Yves?
Hi, I'm Yves Bruno, and I am the undergraduate student advisor at the office. So if you have any questions, I would be the person you could direct all your questions or concerns to. Welcome, and I look forward to meeting every single one of you whenever you get to campus.
Thank you. Great. Kayla?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Potter. I'm one of the international student advisors in the office. Once you finally get to campus and come get to visit the house that we're in, my office is right on the first floor, so I'll probably be the first person that you see when you walk in.
Great. Thank you. And Mike?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Holliba. I am another international student advisor in the office, and I just started at BC in March, so I'm also a newcomer to BC like all of you. It's great to see you all.
Great, thank you. So we are the OISS. This is the staff. There's 5 full-time staff. We also have a grad assistant and usually undergraduate student workers who work with us. So somebody asked in the questions, what does the OISS do? Who are we? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do. First of all, we are responsible for all of your immigration work. So as you already know, we're the folks who issued you those I-20 forms, and throughout your time at Boston College, we'll be helping you with any and all immigration questions you may have. So if you're traveling, if you want to work on campus, you know, if you want to work after you graduate, if you change majors, etc. That's a big part of what we do. So you will be interacting with us one way or another. However, I really hate it when people call us the visa office, because that's not all that we do. We do much more than just immigration and visas. So we do a lot of programs and services for our international students and scholars. The population last year was close to 3,000 international students and scholars from over 100 different countries. So you will be joining either in the fall or hopefully in the spring a very international community. And we serve all of them. I do want to let you know, and we'll be talking more about this, whether you're enrolling from abroad in the fall because of visa and travel delays, or if you're on campus, we'll be providing these programs and services for all of you. So don't be concerned that, oh, I might not be physically on campus in the fall. This office isn't going to be doing anything for me. When we went remote in the spring, we moved all of our programs online remote. And we're going to be doing a lot of that in the fall as well. So we will have programs for you. I'm going to tell you about a couple of our programs, and then I want to highlight the International Assistant Program because we have some of our IAs online, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a minute. So we do a variety of different programs to help students, you know, acclimate to Boston College in the US and Boston in general. We have an undergraduate discussion series where we bring students together every other week, and we provide lunch, and we have different speakers from throughout the university come and talk to you. We're probably going to do some online version of that this year since a lot of our students won't be here. If you are on campus, we have a Thanksgiving host family program where you can go and visit with an American family. We do employment and career workshops. I know some students were asking the questions, are there internships at BC in the US, and how do I find out about them? So we co-sponsor a lot of programs with the Career Center and work with them to teach you how to, kind of write a resume in the US, interview in the US, things like that. So we do a lot of other programs and services. One of the biggest programs that I want to tell you about, well, actually two, is first of all, if you are in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, I'm going to be teaching something called a freshman topic seminar. And it's basically a 1-credit, pass-fail, not a lot of work, course specifically for international students. And the whole purpose of the class, which I created last year, is to help you better adjust to Boston College academically. And the good news is I'm going to be teaching one section of that in person on Tuesdays at 4:30, and I'm going to be teaching a second section of it online at 9 a.m. on Thursdays for all of you who can't make it to campus. And the 9 a.m. is so that our friends in China can hopefully be in it the night before, and our students in Europe can be in it in the afternoon. So if you are in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences and you think you are interested in that course, you can email me actually directly. My email is on our website. The freshmen who took it last year, I'm still in touch with them. They loved it. It really, really helped them adjust to Boston College. So I really want to focus on the International Assistant Program. So somebody asked in our Q&A ahead of time, what is the IA program? So basically, international assistants, and several of them are online, I'll have them introduce themselves in a minute, are upper class students who are selected to serve as basically mentors and peer advisors for you for your entire first year at Boston College. It's different than an OL. I know you met your OLs already, and they are great students. However, they're just there for you during orientation. International assistants will be there for you during orientation and throughout the entire year. And so if you're worried about what classes to register for next semester, they'll be there for you. If in the spring you're wondering about who to live with in housing, they'll be there for you. And so they're there to basically answer any and all questions you may have, because they're upper class students and they've been in your position as a freshman before. And it's a great program. It's actually been going on since 1980. So I know we have a couple of IAs online. If you could just unmute, and this will be a little chaotic, but if you can just, I see a few of you. So the ones I can see, maybe I'll call on just to say hey. So Jay, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jay Weaver. I'm a rising senior. I'm in the Carroll School of Management, and right now I'm in Miami, Florida.
Great, thank you. Angelica?
Hi everyone, my name is Angelica Saggers and I'm a rising sophomore studying accounting and finance in CSOM, and I'm in Ormond Beach, Florida.
Great. Sophia?
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I'm a rising senior. I'm an international studies major, and I'm calling from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Great. Holly? Oh, Holly, I think, is taking a class. She's just listening. Can you say hi?
I'm at work, but all good. Hi, I'm Holly. I'm a senior majoring in political science and minoring in international studies, and I'm calling from the UK.
Yep, she's in the UK and now can come. Great. So Demetra?
Okay, sorry, I'm doing this from my phone, but hi everyone, my name is Demetra. I'm studying finance and accounting for finance, and I'm also doing a minor in international studies, and I'm calling from New Jersey.
Great, let's see. I'm trying to recognize names. Monsi?
Hi, I'm Monsi. I'm a neuroscience major and a global public health minor, and I'm calling from Long Island, New York.
Great. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Elisa. I'm a rising junior. I'm an econ major and a German, Italian, and finance minor. And right now I'm calling from Munich, Germany.
Great. I'm looking through other names to find IAs. Feel free to come on and say hi if I don't see your name, because there's 53 people on here, so I can't see everybody. If you're an IA, come on and say hi if I haven't called on you. Anyone else? Okay. Let me get back to the screen. So those are some of our international assistants. As you can see, we deliberately picked some who are US students and some are who international. That's intentional. The international students have been through exactly what you have been through freshman year, so they can really relate to you. And the US students are the folks who can be those cultural interpreters and informants for you to explain, what happens in U.S. culture and values and things like that. And so that's why we have a combination of both of them. So this is really important. You are all familiar with My BC Orientation, which is the fancy name for WISER. You've been using it all for freshman orientation. I know for a fact that you met with your OLs on there and you've been doing registration, everything on WISER. So you also are now, hopefully have joined the international student community on WISER, on My BC Orientation. If you haven't and you all got an invite to it, make sure you do that. And additionally, you also got an invite to what's called your specific cluster group. And you're like, what's a cluster group? So basically the way the IA program works is we have 2 international assistants who are kind of the coordinators of a smaller group of IAs. And the way we do that is so that you get more personalized attention. And you're gonna be in what these are called cluster groups, not only for orientation, but throughout the entire year. So in WISER, you've actually been put into a specific cluster group. So you got 2 invitations from us, one for the international student community, one for the, it might say International Assistant Group 1, and you were wondering what that was. Please accept that invitation. I've been on there. A lot of these IAs already have put up welcomes and are asking questions. They put up videos on there. And so it's really important that you join your specific cluster group so that you start to communicate with that. I know you have a lot of questions and a lot of other people are answering, but you can on WISER ask the IAs or our office for that matter, any and all questions. But the IAs are an amazing resource. I know your OLs are probably answering questions, but these students specifically have volunteered to work with international students and are going to be with you throughout the entire year. A number of them are international students. So really, just go into My BC Orientation, send a message to the group. You can send a private message. But use that as a great resource. This is the first time we've ever been able to have the cluster groups start to communicate and connect before students even kind of get to campus. So it's a great platform, as you know, you've been using it. So please take advantage of it in terms of the IA program. So that's just a little bit about what our office does. So again, all your immigration work, lots of services and programs for you. And we're basically the liaison, the connection for you to anyone at the university. So you can come and see us, call, email, wherever you are, with any question, and we will connect you to the appropriate people throughout the university who can help you. That's part of the role that we play. And so feel free to reach out with us literally with any question or concern that you might have. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. And I want to make sure the IAs introduce themselves. So I want to talk a little bit about how things are going to work in the fall, both for people who aren't able to get here and people who are. And again, I just looked over all the questions that people submitted. And so I'm going to try to respond to some of them. If you have any other question, please put it in the chat. And one of our other staff is going to look at that, and either we or the IAs will answer the question. And as I'm explaining things, if an IA wants to kind of chime in or anything, just raise your hand or let me know, and we'll have you respond as well. So we know there's a lot of stress and anxiety about the fall. We're feeling it too. You're feeling it. Your parents are feeling it. There's so much uncertainty. We've never been through anything like this in our lives. First of all, I want to tell you that our office is literally working day, night, weekends to advocate for you. Pretty much all we've been doing for the last 4 months since it started is answering your individual questions, participating in meetings. I personally, on a weekly basis, participate with meetings with all the undergraduate deans, residential life, student services, etc. And my whole purpose in life says, what about our freshman international students? What about our international students? So you might not realize it, but your voice is being heard every single day, because that's the role of our office. So in every meeting I am talking about you and advocating for you. So that's really important, that I wanted you to know that, because some people feel like, no, you know, what about international students, or people realizing what our concerns and our questions are, and absolutely. And so please know that we really care about you, we value you, and we are making sure your voices are heard in all over the university. The university is working incredibly hard to try to create a safe environment for those of you who can return in the fall. As you can imagine, it's just an overwhelming responsibility. I'm glad I'm not making those upper administration decisions. It's very, very hard, but they really care, and they really are trying to provide a safe and welcoming environment for everybody who comes back. So I want to talk just a little bit about, you know, if you can't come back, if you can come back, and how that's going to work based on some of the questions that you submitted. And then if you have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So please know that some of what I'm communicating is university policy. It's not necessarily the decision of our office. And so, so I'm going to start by talking a little bit about that. So the first policy, and this is a university policy, again, is that freshman international students cannot defer. So a few people asked that in the questions that they submitted. You cannot defer to the spring or to next year. Boston College is not allowing international students to do that. So you must enroll online in the fall if you're planning to come to Boston College. It doesn't mean that you can't start, you just would be starting from abroad if you can't come. Again, you're probably gonna ask me why? I didn't make that decision, I'm just communicating it to you. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly reach out to the other contacts at the university that you've been communicating with. The other thing is that, again, university policy is that Boston College is not allowing undergraduates to arrive on campus after what's called the drop add period. You probably know what drop add is because you did your registration, but it's the last day to drop a class or add a class on, and that's September 9th. Again, it's a university policy, it's not our policy, but I can explain a little bit why they're doing that. Number one is for the residence life. They need to know who's going to be in the residence halls. You probably aren't thinking about this, but we have 300 or more BC students who are supposed to study abroad in other countries this fall. So they weren't going to be on campus and weren't going to be in housing, and all the study abroad programs have been canceled. So now those students are back on campus and need housing. So one of the reasons they need to know who's here is to make sure there's space on campus for everybody. A second reason is, and this is, you're going to see this when you come back to class, to campus, come to campus, there's different classroom capacities. Due to the coronavirus, we're only allowed to have so many students in each classroom, and that's actually being determined. And so if, you know, the classroom capacity is 15 and there's 15 students, and a student were to come mid-semester, and that would make it 16 and go over the capacity, and you might think, what's the big deal? I'm one little student, one more student. But we would be in violation of state laws then, because they're telling us what the capacity for the classrooms is. And then the last reason, and again, I'm not justifying, I'm just explaining to you, is about fees. So a lot of you have asked, will my fees be refunded if I'm not enrolling, if I'm not physically present for the fall, if you're enrolling from abroad? And the answer to that is absolutely. You will not be paying room and board. You will not be paying your student activity fee. We're going to work on getting your health insurance fee all waived. So that's the good news. So a lot of students ask that in our questions. Am I going to get refunded for all that? The only thing you will be paying is tuition, obviously. But it's also another reason why you can't come mid-semester. So for example, our health insurance company says you have to enroll at the beginning of the semester for the fall, or the beginning of the semester in January. You can't enroll for the health insurance in the middle of the semester if you were to get here in October. Boston College just, you know, it would be very challenging for them to prorate, your student activity fee and your room and board. So again, not a justification, but an explanation as to why they want students to be on campus before drop add, or else you're going to have to wait and come in January. So the good news is drop add is until September 9th. The other really good news is, I don't know how many of you are from Europe. I told Holly this last night, but just last night they did post on the travel.state.gov, that's the Department of State for the US, that they are going to be making exceptions for students coming from Europe to come to the US. So even though the travel restriction is still in place from Europe, you can, if you already have a visa like Holly does, because she's a continuing student, she can just come. When you're applying for your visa, you're going to be applying for something called a national interest exemption. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, I'm a student and I need to get to Boston College. And so some good news for those of you coming from Europe. Unfortunately, as most of you know, the restriction from China has not been lifted yet. We have not heard anything about that. I am not overly optimistic that that is going to be lifted before September. I'm just being honest. But for those from Europe, there is some good news for you. You should have all received a form that was emailed from our office yesterday. Again, it's not our form. I didn't create it. I'm not going to be looking at the responses. We were the messenger. We were sending it out. If you are going to be taking a fully online semester, meaning you're not coming back to campus or you're not starting, and I say come back because there's some IAs on the call, or if you're not physically going to be present in campus in the fall, you do need to fill out that form. And it's not going back to me, it's going back to other people. One of the very first choices you can put is, I am an international student, and for visa or travel restrictions, I just can't I can't come to Boston College. So you just check that off and you sign it and you're all done. You should be aware that you don't want to fill out that form until you're sure you're not coming back, because when you fill out that form and say, I'm not coming, you're forfeiting your on-campus housing. So the deadline technically is around August 3rd, but they're going to be accepting those forms way after that. Someone asked, how late can I decide if I'm coming or not? If you have a visa appointment coming up in August, definitely don't fill out that form saying I'm not coming. If you're from China and you really have decided that it's unlikely those restrictions are going to be lifted, and you're quite confident you're going to be enrolling from abroad in the fall, then go ahead and you can submit that form. But you do want to wait if you're not sure yet, because once you submit that form, you do forfeit your housing. And again, the form's not going to us, it's going to upper university administration, who will review them and then email you and tell you you've been approved to take a semester kind of fully online. A lot of people are concerned, well, I'm not going to get here in the fall. What about my housing, right? So I have been assured by the Director of Residential Life that international students will be the #1 priority, and I mean #1 priority for getting on-campus housing in the spring. They have promised me that. They have assured me that. It may not be the original housing that you thought you were getting, and I'm just being honest about that, but it will be most likely that you will have on-campus housing this spring. You're going to be the top of the list. I made sure they put all the international students on the top of the list to get housing in the spring. We already talked about how all those things are going to be refunded to you. So room and board, student activity fee, health insurance, things like that. And a few of you had asked in the questions, what about my I-20 form? It says I'm coming in August. So once we get through this craziness in September, we're going to be issuing you new I-20s with the new start date in January. So I know a lot of you had questions about, do I need a new I-20? You will need a new I-20. We're not doing them now because you cannot apply for a visa more than 120 days in advance. That's not until September. And we're also honestly just incredibly busy right now, and it's not necessary for us to issue new I-20s in July for students coming in January, but we assure you we will be deferring you. Poor Eves probably is going to do that because he's the undergraduate advisor. We will be issuing you new I-20s with January start dates, so don't worry about that at all. I'm just looking at my list. For those of you who will be back on campus, and we hope many of you will be, a lot of people are asking about quarantine because you hear you're supposed to quarantine, right? So the way Boston College is doing it, which is my understanding at least, is that all students moving on campus are going to be tested for COVID-19 when you move in. And you're going to get the results within 24 hours in theory. That's what I've been told. So you're not going to have to quarantine because you're going to be tested immediately. And if, God forbid, you test positive for it, University Health Services has space for students to quarantine there if necessary. But you will be tested, and that's why they're not making students quarantine. Now, parents are a different issue, and I don't know exactly how to answer that question, so this is my best response. Technically, your parents are not going to be tested, obviously, and they are supposed to quarantine. Actually, people from other states in the United States are supposed to quarantine when they come to Massachusetts for 14 days. Now, having said that, it's not really an enforceable requirement. Your parents aren't going to be gathered up and put in jail for not quarantining. However, that is the state policy, so that's what I have to tell you. But honestly, I don't know how they would necessarily be able to enforce that. So that's the best response I can give to that. And when I'm done, I'm going to ask our staff and all the IAs if they want to add anything. If you are going to be able to come to campus, we hope you will attend our International Student Orientation. It's going to be in hybrid mode. Usually we have 3 days in person. 700 new students, 75 IAs, obviously that can't happen. So there's going to be small parts of it in person on Wednesday the 26th and Thursday the 27th. And the rest of it, we are creating an online orientation site. So for those of you who won't get here, you'll still have an orientation. It will just be online. And for those of you who get here, it will be more in a hybrid mode. The reason we're doing part of it in person is because we want you to meet these great IAs in person, at least briefly. So I already sent you, and I'll send you again. If you can come to campus and you're planning to come to orientation, which we highly encourage you to do, you have to request early move-in because you would be moving into your residence halls earlier for orientation. You have to fill out a request form for that. I sent it already. I'll send it out again. But just know that if you are coming back to campus and attending orientation, you do have to request early move-in. And so orientation will certainly be a little different this year, as is everything going to be a little bit different, but we are still doing an orientation. It just will be a combination of online and in person. And the in-person part is mostly really just focusing on you spending time safely with your international assistants, so you can get to know them. So I'm just taking a quick look. As I'm looking at my list, any other, start with OISS office folks want to add or explain or clarify anything that I've said so far? Just chime in, Sue.
I think you touched on all of it I can think of.
Oh, okay. I thought you had unmuted. So anyone from OIS? Okay, any IAs want to clarify or explain anything that I might have talked about? Holly, is your hand up?
What about quarantine to everyone coming into Massachusetts as well? I'm not sure if you covered that.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. With the exception of our Northeast states, everybody coming to Massachusetts is technically supposed to quarantine for 14 days. That's what I meant when I was talking about the parents. Students do not have to do that because you're going to be tested the minute you move into your dorm. So they're not required to quarantine. But technically, it does apply to parents. However, having said that, we're in Massachusetts right now. I'm sure there are people coming in who are not quarantined. I'm not saying that's a good idea, you should do that. I'm just saying it's not really an enforceable guideline. But students, you don't have to worry about it because you're going to be tested. And even those who live off campus, you're going to be tested as well. It might not be the second you move in because you're not moving on campus, but even all the graduates and everyone here, we're going to be tested. We're going to all be tested in August, all faculty and administrators. So that's how they're going to get around the not having to quarantine for students, at least. Great. So I'm going to start with IAs. Anything else you want to add or to clarify before we kind of open it up to students with questions? And can I ask my staff to look at the chat for questions, and I'll ask you to share them in a couple minutes. But any IAs, anything else you want to add? Sophia, yeah.
Well, I was just looking at the chat, so I guess we'll get to this a little later, but there's someone Laura, who's wondering what online classes will look like. If we need to get to that later, that's fine. But I've been taking online classes this whole summer as a full-time student, so I can talk about that.
Yeah, why don't you do that now, actually, because you've been through it. That's a good question. And I can talk about it from a teaching perspective because I taught online in the spring and the summer. But what's the student perspective? What is it like? Yeah.
So the way that the online classes have worked, they're very self-directed most of the time. So that is one part of it that can be very difficult for people sometimes because you have to be really self-motivated. But the way that the online classes are set up, at least the ones that I have had over the summer, they're broken into what they call modules, which is basically a fancy name for weeks. And each week you get basically a to-do list. That's what it is. You get a list of maybe 10 things that you need to complete. It may be a reading, and the professor will link the reading there and have a description of what the reading is. Then you might have a discussion post. And for those of you who haven't done discussions yet online, it's basically a forum where each student can post a paragraph of their response to something, and you can respond to one another, and that might be part of your to-do list for the week. And then the next item might be watch this recorded lecture, and then the next item might be another reading, and then the next item might be a quiz. And most of these items, some of them might have due dates. So for instance, I'm in a class right now where we have a bunch of lists of things to do, and then the only thing that has a due date is the Friday listening quiz. And we have to do the Friday listening quiz by Friday, but you have to organize yourself so that you get that all done before Friday. So like I said, a lot of it is self-directed. But if the teacher is organized, they'll make it very straightforward, which can be an issue sometimes. But they'll have it's very clear. You just click the next button and the next button, and you do your assignments in order, and you can see when all of them are due. All of them will have a due date. And then you'll just move on to the next module. And it depends on the teacher, whether they do a lot of reading, whether they do a lot of lectures. They might have you listen to something, maybe a podcast. So it really depends on the class. I've taken many different kinds of classes. So I took a poli-sci class, which was mostly focused on lectures and readings. Now I'm taking a music class that has a lot of videos that we watch and music we listen to. So that's kind of the basic format. If anyone else has any questions about that, did that make sense? I hope.
And let me just add that Sophia's a rising senior, right? So they probably expect a little bit more independence and autonomy of you. I think possibly for the freshmen, hopefully there will be a little bit more online, guidance because they're first year students.
Right.
I can tell you, so I taught in the spring and in the summer, but I taught live classes. I was actually live with my students, and we're making them very aware of time differences. We know there's big time differences in both directions. So for those of your professors who don't want to teach at 8 or 9 in the morning, like I'm going to do with one of my classes, it might be recorded, or it might be as Sophia described. And I think some professors will do what I'm doing, and you'll actually interact with them live. So even though we went remote, I saw my students like live in the class every week. So
yeah,
it'll be a combination of those two things.
Yeah, I was going to add that as well, that for some classes, sorry, there's work going on across the street. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yes.
Some professors will, put up a doodle poll to see when students are all available for a live meeting. So my last 2 classes from the first session, we had a live meeting every week. And I think that may change in the fall. Maybe it'll be more live meetings. That's what I'm guessing. at more normal times that we would have class. But yeah, depending on the class, you could either have live meetings or not. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Does any other IA want to just chime in about their experiences with online? Elisa, yep, you have to unmute, yep.
So I have a little question about the bookstore, because I took online classes this summer and it took the bookstore 6 weeks to send an only BC produced book. So will BC produced books be available online? And how does that work with ad drop realistically if it takes like a couple weeks to send to Europe?
Yeah, I'll have to, that's a good question, Elisa. I'll have to find out. I think you have to realize also when things happen in the spring, it was like a shock. And I think even still in summer, we were still in shock. Now they've had time to think about these things and prepare. So hopefully they're more organized, but that is something we can ask. So I think I mentioned already, but if not, we have something called frequently asked questions on our website at bc.edu/OISS. We're constantly updating them. When students ask us questions, we find out the answers and then we put that on our FAQ. So Elisa, that's a good question. I admit when I don't know an answer to something and I don't know the answer to that. I hope that they're better organized now and are anticipating that a little bit more than in the past. Yeah. So can I? Oh, who's
sorry, we're getting questions about early move-in. Could you explain that process?
Sure. So because if you're coming to campus, because you'd be participating in the International Student Orientation, you get special permission to move in early. So the program is on Wednesday, August 26th and Thursday the 27th. So you'd be moving in on Tuesday, the August 25th before everybody else. So the way it works is that and maybe some of the IAs can explain because they've had to do it too. It's basically going to be an Agora, which hopefully you've logged on to before. And there's something called My Res Life. And you basically just fill in kind of your name, where you're going to be living on campus and the move-in date, which for you would be August 25th. It comes to me, I confirm and approve it that you're an international freshman, and then Res Life will just say, you're all set. Res Life is going to stagger when you're moving in. You're actually going to get times for IAs. It's important that you know this too. You can't just show up. You're going to get like time slots because they can't have 50 people there at once because of COVID. So you're actually going to get assigned particular time slots. If you can't make that, you can contact them. But it's not going to be as it has been in the past to show up whenever you can. So I'll be sending out to the international freshmen, again, the instructions and link. There's it tells you exactly how you go into Agora and My Res Life, et cetera. It tells you step by step. And if you are going to be returning to campus and participating in orientation, you should fill that out. The other thing is on our website, there's also an orientation response form. We also need you to fill that out if you're coming in person. IAs, you don't have to do this. Because we need to know how much food to order. So if you're planning to move in for orientation, not only fill in the early move-in form, but also go on our website. Again, just OIS. If you just put OISS, it'll come up. And there's a orientation response form. So we just know, and we can feed you and have enough food for you, right? So can
what is the, I think this was a good question too. What is the best course of action for a student that has a visa appointment after the cutoff deadline, the September 9th?
Mm-hmm.
Should they still go through with it, or?
You're their advisor, Eves. What would you say?
Well, in a case like that, I mean, I guess you could still go ahead with the appointment, but we would still need to, since you won't be able to get to campus, we would need to defer your, actually, you can't even, wait.
I would say be careful, because if they find out you're not coming into the spring and it's more than 120 days in advance, they might tell you to come back. So you might be wasting your time.
Right, because the visa appointment would be after the start date.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Deferred.
Eves, did you want to add something? Yeah. So if you know you're not coming until the spring, that could be problematic. Because again, your appointment's after the start date on the I-20. And
Yeah,
if you
okay.
do the new I-20 and it's more than 120 days in advance, they're going to tell you to come back. Is that what you agree with, Eves? Or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, yeah, there's a good chance you might have to change that appointment since it would be too late for the fall, but too early for the spring.
So
Yeah.
classes start in the spring, I think on January 19th. So just count 4 months back. So that's around September 19th. That October, November, December, January. Yeah, that you'll be able to start to apply for visas for the spring. And that's why we'll be issuing you those deferred I-20s in September. Good question.
There's been some questions about embassies reopening. So earlier this week, the Department of State announced that they would start to slowly reopen embassy locations and resume visa services, but it is going to vary by embassy. So keep checking for more information with the embassy in your location to see when they're going to start doing actual appointments. I know many students have had appointments get scheduled, but then they get canceled as the appointment date arrives because the embassy hasn't actually opened yet. So do keep checking with your local embassy for more instructions. It is sometimes possible to request an emergency appointment, but those are obviously going to be quite limited right now because the embassies have just started to reopen. So again, you would want to check with the specific embassy location where you are to get some more information about that.
Yep, and they started reopening, I think, July 15th, which is this week. And we've heard definitely in different, I've heard Mexico, definitely different countries in Europe. So they are, the good news is they are starting to open. The bad news is there's going to be long backlogs and visa delays because they were closed for 4 months. Good question. So can our staff just field any other questions from the chat?
There's a lot about Thanksgiving. What'll happen after Thanksgiving?
So Thanksgiving's a great holiday. If everything's okay, we encourage you to do our host family program. So right now, the messaging from Boston College is we are going through December. That's what they are saying. I've asked it on a regular basis. As of right now, we are going through our regular, through December. As you've heard, a lot of other schools already said that they're closing at Thanksgiving and students aren't coming back after that. Right now, BC is not planning to do that. Now, of course, having said that, if things change with COVID and get really bad, that could certainly change. But that's not the plan of Boston College right now. They're very strongly saying they plan to be open till December.
For students asking about orientation, about missing orientation, so everything will be online. So even if you're outside, you can follow along using, we're going to be doing everything through the Canvas platform. So it's okay if you can't make it, before orientation. So everything will be online. So that's not an issue.
And your international assistants, and I think they know this already because I've told them, so hopefully not a surprise. Even if you're not at Boston College and you're enrolled from abroad, they're still your international assistant. So they're going to be helping you in a very different way. Obviously, you're going to have maybe Zoom check-ins or other ways of remotely check-in, but they're still going to be your international assistant even if you're not here. So don't worry, that's not going to be deferred to the fall, to the spring. They will still be your IA even if you're enrolling from abroad. And again, different from your OLs who are lovely people but disappear after orientation. The IAs will still be there for you. You'll just be connecting with them in a different way. I've encouraged them to do like cluster group Zooms. So if some of the students are here and some are abroad, you can still all get together and see each other. And then when hopefully you do come in the spring, you'll already know each other. It's a year-long program, so the IAs and the group will still be there for you in the spring. So they will be there for you in the fall, whether you're on campus or not.
There's also a question about late arrivals. So if a student is able to arrive before the add drop period, like say on August 28th, regardless of whether they are living on campus or not, how is that going to work?
So that's fine. You can arrive up to that date. If you miss our orientation, as Eve said, no problem. It's going to be online. The IAs will connect with you at that point. But Boston College has said you can arrive up to drop add. So you should not fill out the form that says I'm not coming because they'll give your housing away. So do not fill out that form, and you will still have your housing placement at that point. So don't worry, that will be fine. Again, our orientation is online. The IAs will still be there. You can still get into your residential life placement. So that should be okay.
There's also, to follow up on that, there's also more questions about late arrivals. Like if students from China, if the travel restriction gets lifted, could they come to classroom? And they, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to, just because they've already figured out the classroom space and how many people can be in it. So if you can't get here by drop ad, you'll have to wait till January.
And again, that's a university policy. That's not our decision. Your housing placement is also going to be probably given away at that point. So unfortunately, I've asked this numerous times because we've gotten feedback from students saying they want to come later. And I've been told by the upper administration many times that that's not going to be possible.
I think somebody had a question about testing. So if a person's living off campus, will they be tested as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So they just won't be tested as quickly because they're not moving on. But you probably don't know, but all of our graduate students, not just international students, all graduate students at BC live off campus. They also have to be tested. Our staff all live off campus. Obviously, we're going to be tested. So they absolutely will be tested. It just won't be the minute they're moving into campus, obviously, because they're not moving into campus, but that will happen, yes.
There was a question about storing luggage or belongings. The Office of Residential Life would have more information about local companies that could store your belongings off campus.
Yeah, they have a specific company. I can't remember the name of it. Some of the IAs might know it because when students left in the spring, they used it. But they work with a specific storage company and they have an agreement with them. So Residential Life, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but we got asked that question a lot in March when folks had to move off campus.
It's called Piece by Piece.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, piece by piece. Other questions from the chat?
Oh, there's one about some of you might have heard last week, there was a guidance from the government saying you need a new I-20 with saying you're not in all online classes. That was rescinded. That's no more. So embassies should not be asking for that. We would have had to print, I don't know, 2,000 I-20s. So if your embassies are asking for that, they should know at this point that it was rescinded on Tuesday, a couple days ago.
Yeah, so that's not in effect anymore. That went away. As you probably heard, universities, states, everybody brought a lawsuit against the US government, and they just, I was on the court hearing online and it lasted 2 minutes. They went in and the US government said, we take it back. And so that's not in effect anymore. That was horrible, just really just cruel for international students, but it's not in effect. It's not in effect anymore. So, so for those, this is really important. For those of you who are coming on campus, this is kind of a new interpretation that just came out and is causing some anxiety for us and for you. So it's hard for me to explain this. Because you're new students, and this does not apply to continuing students, so don't panic, some of our IAs who are international, you most likely cannot take more than one fully online course. That's an immigration regulation. It was taken away in March because of COVID, and for students who were here in the spring and are continuing students, it still applies to them, but it probably is not going to apply to new students. So before you panic, just realize, because I talk to the undergraduate deans all the time, a hybrid class is okay. So a mix of in-person and online is okay, and an in-person class is okay. And Boston College, especially for freshmen, is trying to have as much in-person experience for you as possible in a safe way. So it would be extremely unlikely for people on campus that you would wind up in multiple online classes. For those of you abroad are concerned, it's perfectly fine if you're not in the United States. You'll be enrolled all online. It's not for you. Just if you come to the US, the old regulations are probably going to apply for you, and that means not more than one fully online class. Hybrid classes are okay, and hybrid means a mix of in-person and online or remote.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So if the class itself says online synchronous, but the discussions are in person, does that count as
Yes,
hybrid?
a hybrid class, yes. Right. Believe it or not, even if you're physically in the classroom, but your professor is teaching online because maybe they're older and have health concerns or something, but you're all in the BC classroom and he or she is coming through, the video feed, that's also considered in person. It's where the student's located, not where the professor is located. Right.
I had a question. If you are able to travel from Europe and you're returning international student and have a visa, do you have to go back to campus if you are able to travel?
Yes, the expectation is that you would be going back to campus, right? So other questions from the chat, or if any IAs just have kind of words of wisdom right now, just for international freshmen, or anything else you kind of want to share with them. We just have a couple of minutes left. And international freshmen, if you have any questions, put them in the chat quickly.
There's a couple questions about the move-in, the early move-in form. One is, where is it? And the other one is, should I fill it out if I don't have a visa, if I'm not sure I'm coming yet?
So it's in Agora. I'm going to send you the link. Again, it has the exact steps of how you get into it, like step by step. So it's in Agora. As far as filling it in, I would wait if you don't even have a visa appointment at this time, because residential life is not going to kind of want to save a space for you if you think you're not coming. So again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest. For those of you from China, it's unlikely that that restriction is going to be lifted before classes start. So you probably don't want to fill it in. I'm not trying to single you out. I just want to be honest. We have not heard anything about that being lifted. We have heard that the Europe restriction was starting to make exemptions for students. So I'm very sorry about that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know if we mentioned this and I missed it, but if for some people, a few people have said their visa appointments are like September 15th or something like that, you can actually ask your embassy or consulate usually for an expedited appointment as a student. You don't need an extra letter or anything like that. You just show your I-20, show you're supposed to arrive by that date. So don't be afraid to ask the embassy or consulate for an expedited appointment.
And the start date on your I-20s, Eves, is what? It's probably like the
25th.
25th or something. So it's earlier than classes even start because it's for orientation. So you just say, I have to be on campus by August 25th. That's what it says on my official immigration document. And hopefully that will help you get an earlier appointment. So any last questions before we wrap up, or any IAs want to share any words of wisdom before we finish?
There is one more question about online courses being pass-fail only, like in the spring. So I don't know, Adrian, if you've heard anything about that, or if that's a good question that we could take to the deans to get some more information about.
As of now, that is not going to be the case, I don't think. That was an exception that BC made in the spring. I don't anticipate that being the case. Some classes are, like the one credit class that I'm teaching is pass-fail. But regular classes went all pass-fail just because everybody was in, a panic. I do not think, as of right now, they're going to be doing that in the fall. Okay, so if there's no other questions, again, I just want to reiterate, know your information, know your resources, go to our website regularly. Again, there's an FAQ on there. Just as a reminder, if you're not going to be on campus, to fill out that form. If you are going to be on campus, fill out the early arrival residential life form and our orientation form. And make sure you engage and interact on My BC Orientation in your cluster groups, because even if you don't physically get here, you're still going to be, interacting with your IAs and your cluster groups that way. Again, I completely assure you, and all of our staff will assure you, that whether you're in your home country, in another country, at Boston College, we will continue to provide programs and services for you. and your voice is being communicated on campus. I promise you that. I've been working day and night to make sure that international students' concerns and interests and specific, situations are being shared with everyone at Boston College, the upper administration, every office you can imagine. Please know that that is happening. And so we're so happy to have interacted with you a little bit today, and we will hope to continue to do that, whether in person at the end of August or remotely. And please stay safe and stay healthy and take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.